Let me ask you something about the Michigan fan base. They seem certain that they have a legitimate chance to win the national championship.
Oh, this should be good.
I think they got like a 1% chance to win it all.
Whoa.
I mean, I put them in the same bracket as like a Penn State, a Utah, a Wisconsin, a Washington to win it all. But I think they think they're like a Alabama or Ohio State type team that can win it all. And I just don't see that.
1%. Okay, DeReal, let's line this up here. You just put Michigan in a category with Washington, Utah, and Penn State. Okay, I'm not jumping on you yet here. Okay, and we're not going to hold you to this because we know this is just coming off the top of your head. But what kind of percentages would you give each team from the top down?
I would give Georgia like a 45 to 50% chance to win it all.
Okay.
I would give Ohio State a 20% chance to win it all.
Okay.
And Alabama a 15% chance to win it all. And then I would give Texas a 5% chance to win it all. So I'm at 90%. And then I would distribute it between like Penn State, Washington, Wisconsin, Michigan, and 6 other teams at 1%.
Gotcha. Okay. 1%. Well, they certainly haven't done it yet. So, but 1% seems a bit low to me. I would go more in the, and even when I say this number, I know a lot of Michigan fans are going to even think that I'm shortchanging them. But if you really look at, 100% goes pretty quickly if you start delving out the percentages. I would go more in the 6 to 8% range.
I guess, but my issue is not just, it's a combination of Michigan's schedule is going to be tougher than some of the other teams I laid out. Like, I think they're a better team than Texas, but I think Texas has a much easier path to not only make the college football playoff, but I think stylistically they'll match with the teams in it better. So that's why I give them a higher percentage. And I just don't see how Michigan beats Georgia. I know Michigan has 15 minutes every day that they're going to beat Georgia, and, that's great until you meet on the football field and you're, what is it, Jim Mora, offensive line, 2-time best offensive line in the country, meets a better offensive line and gets pushed around like ragdoll.
Yeah. And again, I'm going to highlight something here that I think you agree with that I bring to light from time to time during these discussions. There's a major difference, a major gap between getting to the playoffs and winning a national championship. It's almost more difficult to win those 2 games than it was the other 11 or 12 games that you won to get to the playoffs.
Right. And I see Mike Ford in the comments saying, but Texas can beat Georgia. I'm not saying they're likely to beat Georgia. I'm just saying that the way they approach football, I have seen replicated throughout previous years to beat a Georgia. I have not seen a team in forever go head-to-head with Georgia and win. I mean, when's the last time, Mark, a team has outrushed Georgia, out-physical Georgia, out-defense Georgia?
Well, Alabama looked really good against them in the previous year's SEC championship game.
Right, but those are 41-42 type games. I'm talking about a 17-14 type game.
Or a Michigan kind of game. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, South Carolina with the 2 pick sixes on Jake Fromm in 2019. And that was highlighted by 2 pick sixes. So that's basically what won the game.
Right. So it's been a while. And even that was a pretty fluky game.
Yeah. Like I said, 2 pick sixes. Yeah.
Right. So I just don't see how Michigan's style can ever beat Georgia. Because they're going to match up against Georgia, and there's going to be a huge talent gap between Michigan and Georgia's just going to push them off the field. Not as bad as what Georgia did to TCU. But if Michigan and Georgia played right now in a playoff game, I would expect Georgia to win by like 24 to 31 points.
Well, before any Michigan fans jump all over you, let's consider that the game that was played 2 years ago in the playoffs could have been pretty much any score that Georgia wanted it to be. 34-11 was kind, is what I'm saying.
Right. I mean, Mark, at the end of the first quarter of that playoff game, I think we all kind of knew Georgia was the better team. and they were going to win that football game. It was pretty evident early on because not only does Michigan have to match up with Georgia's physicalities and talent on the first end, they have to do it on the back end. And I haven't seen Michigan be able to do it with their first stringers. So how are they going to do it with their second, third, and fourth stringers to match Georgia's players?
Our guy Mike Fort brings up a good point just in the quarterback change at Michigan and J.J. McCarthy being a much higher level athlete than Cade McNamara.
I don't remember the last time I saw Michigan throw the ball like 45 times a game. Their quarterback just completely take over the game. Their wide receivers got complete separation. And I think that's what it's going to need to take to beat a Georgia. I think it's just a philosophical difference between the way Michigan and Ohio State plays.
Yeah, so you're not necessarily saying Michigan's better than Ohio State, but Ohio State's better equipped to win a national championship.
That's correct.
I think that was pretty easy to see in last year's playoff, at least.
Right. And I think people are just because you're the best team in the Big Ten doesn't automatically make you a guarantee. It's about matchups. Styles make fights. And this is going to happen a lot more, I feel like, when we go to the 12-team playoff. It's not about can you beat a bunch of different teams. It's about can you beat the team in front of you. And for Michigan, I just don't see how they're going to ever be able to beat Georgia in the near future. Do you see any realistic scenario where they could beat Georgia in just a 24-21 type game?
Well, I think if Michigan turns out to be the team that I expect and Georgia does as well, then yes, if they stepped on the field, I think Georgia has an 80 to 85% chance of winning, and Michigan's going to have to play. They're going to have to be the recipient of the kind of situations that TCU was against them.
Right. And I love the arguments I'm receiving in the chat. People are saying, well, because Missouri was able to make it close against Georgia, or Kent State was able to make it close against Georgia, that means Michigan can able to do it. Mark, can you explain the difference between a regular season game against Missouri than a playoff game against Michigan?
Yeah, we've seen this time and time again throughout the history of the college football playoff, where when there is a team, i.e. Michigan State 2015, Oklahoma 2019, that's a really good football team that in no way would get blown out to the degree that they did eventually in the college football playoff, because there are much lesser teams playing closer games during the regular season. Once that NFL talent or anyone's talent is laser focused and everybody's hyper focused on that moment, that game, and teams are playing at their very best and not just slugging through a Missouri game on the road in the middle of October when they may have just played Tennessee and then they're going to play Florida the next week. When you see that hyper focused attention bring that talent to its peak, to its ceiling, then that's when there's a difference between being the best team in the country and the seventh best team in the country. And that difference isn't 2 touchdowns during the regular season or a field goal game. It's Joe Burrow throwing for 7 touchdowns in the first half against Oklahoma. It's 38-0 Alabama, Michigan State. It's what we saw Georgia, Michigan, where the game was over and it's 34-3, just starting the third quarter. That kind of scenario.